Welcome to Love Your Life After Divorce, the podcast where you'll learn everything you need to know to rebuild your life after divorce from the inside out. Let's dive in. All right. Well, everybody, welcome to the podcast today. I'm so excited to have a special guest with us, Lauri Newell, who is the owner of an organizing company. And I'm just going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about how she got into what she does and anything else you want to share about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Lauri Newell, and I own Victory Organizing. I started my company before the pandemic, which is an interesting time to start, right as things were launching off there. And I found that I just have this passion for helping people make their space really work for their life, that I believe that everyone can have a space that really is the respite that they need, and also the launching pad into their meaningful work that they do, however that looks. So I was always doing this for people, and my husband was like, hey, you could make money doing that. And I was like, really? Like, I don't know. And so it took a while to really feel empowered to be able to launch my own thing, but I did, and here I am, and I've had so much fun helping people along the way.
That is amazing. I love that so much. And I think the reason we decided to have this conversation and that I wanted to have you on the podcast is because I think that it's such a symbolic and just a day-to-day area where divorced women can learn how to just create their own spaces for themselves. And, when you separate your life from someone else, especially if you've been together for a long time, so many of your things were
Yeah.
shared things. And so I imagine, and I can speak from experience too, it's hard to know sometimes what to get rid of and what to keep and how to reorganize your space when you've been used to sharing space with someone else for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And so I guess the first question I have for you is what advice or what guidelines would you give someone if they're trying to decide what to do with items that are very specifically focused on the marriage, like the wedding dress, the rings, photos, photo albums, those kinds of things? Do you have
Yeah.
any, I guess, suggestions for divorced women on what
Yeah.
to do with those things?
I think it's really contextual, and the biggest question is whether or not there are children involved. Because if there are
Mm,
kids involved, then they do kind of at some point long for a glimpse into what their life was like before the divorce. Because depending upon their ages, they may not remember that at all, or they might remember
mm,
it some. And so I find that keeping a memory box or section or something that's like just a glimpse, a memory for these kids to say, like, yes, there were happy times in this family before the change, and then we can be happy again, but that there was that. And so I find that keeping a few photos, if the rings are important, whatever, just choose how much space that you want to designate toward it, and what's really important that you feel like your kids would really want. But beyond that, I encourage people to release anything that causes pain, anything that brings up old struggles or anger or hurt or memories that bring you down. And there are a ton of things to do, like with the wedding dress. I know that there's an organization that will turn them into like baby baptism gowns. I've heard of that, or I heard you were telling me about like some people will have a bonfire with it, or what. It kind of depends upon the depth of I guess, the therapeutic aspect that needs to happen. Like, does this need to be burned and crushed and destroyed, or does it just need to be released? I know there are also
mhm.
organizations that give wedding dress or like sell wedding dresses for like thrifting kind of situations. And so I just encourage people to release anything really that's no longer serving you. If it's not a part of your new life that you want going forward, I really give people permission to let go of things that bring them down.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, basically what you said and what I believe is that it's so individualized. It all depends
Mhm.
on, like you said, are there kids involved?
Mhm.
And so I think there's a way to honor your past
Yep.
and still, preserve certain memories for your kids while also honoring your own experience in the moment.
Yes.
Like you said,
Yes.
the therapeutic component of I don't want to be reminded of this all the time, or I have no
No,
need to hold on to this physical object that
no.
represents, something I'm
Mhm,
ready to let go of. So I think it's so
mhm,
individualized. And I guess my piece of advice would be not to make super snap decisions out of like pure anger. I would say give yourself a little bit of time to decide. You don't want to burn your wedding dress and then go, oh, shoot, I think my daughters would have really enjoyed that, or something. So I would say just give yourself a little bit of time and space to really think through what you want to do with those things. But
mhm.
like you said, I mean, and it sounds like you've probably worked with some women who needed a little bit of permission. Like it's
Definitely.
okay to get rid
Yep,
of that. If you want to
it is.
sell your wedding rings, like it's
Do
totally
it.
fine. Like I
Yep.
think whatever works for you, whatever works for the individual
Hmm.
is what they should do. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. And I mean, there are probably so many ways that you can preserve those memories for your kids. Or
Hmm.
even I've also heard some women talk about how like in some of their wedding photos, they have family members that are no longer alive and they want to remember them. And so there's lots of reasons why you might choose to keep or get rid
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
pictures. And there's probably a million different ways you can organize them. So, yeah, just very individualistic. Um, and then I guess this leads me to kind of like the space that you're trying to create or work with after
Yes.
you are no longer living with someone else, and I guess it's a little bit different. Like, let's first talk about if you stay in the marital home and
Hmm.
your ex leaves,
Hmm.
then you're probably going to have a lot of things in your space that
Hmm.
remind you of your
Hmm.
ex. And
Right.
so, I wonder if I'm sure it can feel a little overwhelming. I wasn't in that scenario myself, but I'm sure that can feel overwhelming when you're
Yeah.
constantly looking around and being reminded of someone you don't really want to be thinking about that's causing you a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you help women in that situation.
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, obviously, like you said, each situation is a little bit different, but I have walked into homes where she's like, he's gone and he took what he wanted, but I still am dealing, but he left all this stuff. Like I don't know what to do with with all of his stuff. And so sometimes it can be helpful. Like I will do that for people to be able to go in and like I will clear out his dresser drawers, his bathroom stuff. Like that's so painful for her. So I it's a gift in that way. And then other aspects though, it's like, okay, but what things actually he does need this. So a lot of times there's like a get this to him. Here's the box. Here's your stuff. When that can be arranged to because sometimes there are things that are not that you can't just get rid of. But mostly though, it's about resetting the space in as much as possible to facilitate your new life. So it's like, okay, if the ex is gone, how do I want this space to feel for me? What would make it feel fresh and good and ready for this new chapter, ready for it to embrace new things? Like what works for you? So like I've done a lot of closets, right? Where it's like, okay, now I have this whole closet to myself. What might that look like? And we can be so used to thinking like, well, but this is what I have. Like, no, this is what we have. And so have to work with. And so we work on spreading it out and going like, how can we make this closet feel like a sanctuary for you, like a boutique you get to shop in to get dressed, like a perfect way to start your day to come into this space and really feel your best.
Mm, I love that. I totally love that. And I think that's a great question just to ask is like, how do I want to feel in my
Mm-hmm.
own space? And I'm sure
Yes.
you could break it down into individual areas, like you said, my own bedroom. How do I want to feel here? How do I want
Yes.
to feel in my closet? How do I want to feel
Yep.
when I walk in my bathroom? And,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a good guideline to think about how you want to feel. Because some people may want to feel peaceful and calm and safe. Other
Right.
people might want to feel
Energized.
excited. Yeah,
Yeah.
energized. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
and I'm no expert in like decorating spaces, and it's so funny because one of the things I was thinking about our conversation is that my ex-husband had me convinced that I was bad at decorating. When we were together, he always kind of picked everything out, and I was so laid back that I was just like, yeah, whatever, whatever. But then when I got my own space after the divorce, I realized, oh,
I
like I
do.
actually have preferences, and I
I
like
do.
certain
Look at
colors,
you.
and I like,
Yes.
certain
Yes.
like the way it feels
Right.
to me is like a happy space or a
Yes.
like a clean, a clean space.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just interesting how
Absolutely.
it's when you're in a space that's not with your ex, then it is really fun to create that for
Yeah.
yourself so that you feel
Yes.
at home and you feel like it represents you, you know,
Mhm.
as a person. So I think that's so fun.
For sure. I often have clients start by closing their eyes because it's overwhelming. There's clutter, there's stuff, but close
Mm,
my eyes and feel, okay, what do I want this space to do? How do I want it to feel? What's its function? What do I want out of this? And that's a really helpful thing to do, especially if you're overwhelmed with too much stuff or his stuff or whatever. Just like, no, stop and just imagine, okay, what do I want this space to do for me?
I love that starting point. So let's say someone does that and they have this good
Yeah.
idea of what they want the
Yeah.
space to do for them, but then they open their eyes and they look around and it's still just like this cluttered mess. Like, where do
Right.
you advise someone start? Like, is there a
Right.
good place to start in tackling a lot of stuff?
So I am, because I can come into with a client with an unbiased view, right? And I don't have emotional attachment to the stuff. It really helps to do that. So if you don't have an organizer available, but have a friend that could walk with you, that can be really helpful. Just go like, hey, even I just need you to body double with me. Like, can you fold these things while I sort or help me talk through this? Because there then becomes a lot of secondary questions. So like we have the big vision for what we want this space to be and feel like. Okay, so now what are the things that are important in that? And so sometimes you can pick those out. Like if you have a lot of things going on, you're like, okay, that's important. I want to make sure that no, like I've worked with artists who are like, okay, I really want this space to be able to facilitate my art. So I want to make sure that I have a workstation where I can leave my things out because I can do that now that I have my own space, right? And so we think about what are the important elements to pull in of actual physical things, if that makes sense. And then if you're working by yourself, though, I really encourage people to start small. Don't try to break off a huge amount, like go through one box or tackle one flat surface. Um, uh, Marie Kondo has her method of like start with the clothes and then do the paper and then everything else. And people go like, but everything else, like how do but how do I do everything else? That's such a big amount. So I find that gathering like things together is really helpful. Like if you go, oh, I do want to make this art space. I'm going to go hunting. I'm going to do a scavenger hunt around my house to find all of the art things because I really want them to land in this one place or some things like that to be able to start gathering like things together. Because once you have all the like things together, that helps you to see the quantity that is there and to realize, like, oh, actually, I do have 72 pairs of shoes and maybe I don't actually want to keep that many. And so the physical space limitations can be helpful to go, okay, well, I have this much shoe space. These are the ones that are important. And that can help to release things that are less important. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. I don't know.
Oh,
Did
no.
that make sense? So
Yeah.
you're pulling what's most important, but you're also gathering like things to figure out what of those is most important to then determine where do these things need to go, how much space do we need to hold them. Some things you have to find a bigger container in order to fit how much there
Mm.
is. You're like, well, this is all the yarn and I have to make a container for all the yarn. So you're like, okay, well, we need a bigger basket for the yarn or whatever the thing is. Other things you go, no, this is how much space I have. So I'm going to eliminate some things in order to fit in that space. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And the way you just described that, even the idea of grouping like things together. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a strategy or a thing, a way to go through your things that a lot of people just
Mm-hmm.
don't think about or know. Like, your expertise as an organizer, I think like the systematic way that
Mm-hmm.
you see a space and decide how to organize things. I think a lot of people don't have that skill. We just kind of have stuff and it's just where it is. And, a lot of people don't even think about it.
Hmm.
And do you think that it's like a universe, or maybe not universal, but I just wonder how often or how many people are affected by their spaces? Like, do you think all humans are affected by their physical spaces, or do you think some people are just like, oh, I could be surrounded by a bunch of trash and it wouldn't bother me at all? And then other people are like, that's out of place. I need to move that cup over an inch. Like,
Right.
you think there's a, you know what I'm
I
saying?
would assume it's a spectrum like everything else, right?
Yeah.
Because I've
Yeah.
heard of people who say, I just focus on my work and I don't even care if a tornado is happening behind me. Those people
Hmm.
I feel though are pretty rare because most of us really do feel the energy of the space that we're in. And so if
Hmm.
things are cluttered, it can be really hard to focus. Like I know Einstein has some quote about like, if a clean desk is an empty desk is a sign of an empty mind, or like cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, then what an empty desk must be the sign of an empty mind or something, because apparently he was messy, right? So he was so
Ah,
focused
gotcha.
on his work. But I don't think most people are like that. I think most people, especially the clients I've worked with, it's like once their space is uncluttered and filled with the things that they love that inspire them to live fully, they feel so energized. And they're like, oh my gosh, now I'm
Mm,
excited to get up and go in my closet in the morning and choose out an outfit instead of wanting to just shut the door because I can't even walk in there. Or now I'm
mhm,
inspired to cook because my kitchen's clean and my counters are clear. So I have space to create, healthy food. And so most people, I'm going to generalize. Most people, I think, really do feel affected by their environment, and which is why they say like make your bed for yourself. Like don't it doesn't you don't
mm,
have to wait for somebody else to be around to go like, oh God, I got to make the bed. Like no, it's a self-care act to keep your space in such a way that inspires you to live fully.
yeah. And I think you brought up another good point is I think maybe a good thing to do to evaluate how you feel right now about your space. Like you said, when you walk into
Mhm.
your closet, well, how do you feel now? Because
Mhm.
that would be a good, I guess, way to decide what area of my
Mhm.
house do I want to work on. Because some spaces you walk into and you're like, oh, this is nice, this is great. And then other spaces, like you said, you kind of avoid or you feel
Mhm. Mhm.
overwhelmed when you're in that space, or you just feel like it
For
feels
sure.
dead or cold, or so I think
Yeah.
that'd be a nice thing to do, just kind of walk through your house and say,
Yeah.
how do I feel when I walk in each of these rooms? That might help
Yeah.
you decide what you want to tackle first.
Yeah, a lot of times people ask me like, where do I start? What do I do first? And I always encourage people start with the thing that bothers you the most day in and day out,
Mm-hmm.
right? If
Mm-hmm.
it's your kitchen counter that gets everything gets dumped on, like that affects you. If it's, your bathroom that you can hardly find the things that you need, start with the thing that bothers you the most and that affects you most regularly.
Mm-hmm. Having this conversation with you, I've had this urge right now to like jump up and like go start
Right?
cleaning,
It's
go
so
start
good.
organizing.
It's so
I'm
good.
like, I know. And it's like the perfect time of the year. I think January just has that, obviously it's a new beginning, and I love decluttering and like reorganizing everything in January. So I feel like this is like the
Yes.
perfect time of the year to have this conversation with you. So fun. Well, do you have any, I guess, I don't know, specific stories, like your experience, I guess, helping specifically divorced women? Are there any commonalities that you see, or like any experiences that you've had that you think would be helpful to
Mhm.
share?
I'm always, I tend to notice that we feel like we need permission. And uh, I think, do I say a lot of women feel like we need permission to do something or to be free of something? And so whenever I can, I give women that permission. Like obviously it's not my authority to do that, but we need encouragement from each other to say like, yes, this is for you and you have permission to make this your own and to start over and to get, if it's a clean slate that you need, great. If it's fresh inspiration that you need, let's find it. Let's make the space really work. Like I said, for the life that you want to live going forward. I Permission, I think, is the biggest thing that I want to give you. I give you permission to make your space your own, for a place for you to thrive going forward. So when I walk in, I walked into a situation with a divorced woman's house where he had left and she was figuring out like, but well, I really enjoy paint by numbers. So what if and so we take the prime real estate and we go like, that doesn't need to have the family games in it anymore. That's not the season that we're in. Let's make this let's make this drawer, this prime real estate drawer in the living room, and it's going to be paint by number stuff because that's what brings you joy now. And so finding ways to make your space reflect your values and really thinking that through to like, well, what do I want to do in my space and how do I want to feel? That leads us to that you need permission to go for it and the power to walk that out and go like, yes, I am releasing these things. And sometimes it's helpful to schedule a pickup, like if you know you have a lot of things to release. There are in Nashville, there's the ARC is an organization that they will come and they will pick things up off your porch or wherever you tell them that you've left it. And to give yourself permission to move forward, I think is super important.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I wanted to just highlight the fact that if you're in, especially if you're very early, if you're just very recently divorced or even just separated, don't pressure yourself
Mm.
to get rid of things before you're ready. Like
Sure.
honor your own process. Like, because I
Yep.
think that that act of getting rid of either shared items, from your marriage or even his items, I think just be kind to yourself and compassionate to yourself and let yourself grieve
Absolutely.
that loss before you feel,
Yep.
pressured to like get rid of it. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to be moving on. I should probably get rid of
Mm,
this stuff. Like just be,
mm-hmm.
be in tune with yourself and honor
For
yourself and
sure.
know that like there's no timeline. But there
Mm-mm.
also comes that point where I think, we may be holding ourselves back and clinging on to the past instead of looking forward. And I
Mhm.
think that's a big turning point for divorced women. And when
Mhm.
when you reach that point when you're like, okay, like I'm ready to put the past behind me, I'm ready to let go, I'm
Mm.
ready to move on, I'm ready to create my own life, then,
Right.
then I think so much of what we've
Yes.
talked about today is really incredibly helpful. But I just kind of wanted to highlight that because there may be some
Agreed.
people listening thinking, I'm not ready for that. Like I'm not ready
Um,
to let anything go. And that's totally
yes.
fine. Like,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
really glad you said that because most of the women that I have worked with are in the place where they're calling me in because they're ready to start
Yeah.
fresh. But
Hmm.
I totally agree that that is super important to listen to yourself. And when I'm working with clients too, we work through a lot of the process of like, where are you at with this? And stopping to feel the feelings because feelings come up when you start going through stuff. And
Oh yeah.
that's something to bear in mind too, that there's a huge emotional energy needed when organizing, especially through these life transition kind of times. It's like when hard things come up, will I let myself stop and feel what I need to feel about that? Usually, sometimes it's about the item, but usually it's about the memories that that item triggers. And so, taking that time to really look at that and feel it and then be done with it, I think is a really healthy part of that process when you're ready.
Mhm.
Because I absolutely agree. Don't dive into getting rid of stuff until you feel like the time is right.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you're so compassionate. I'm sure your clients really appreciate that. Like, not only are you just helping them organize their stuff, but you probably walk them through
For sure.
their emotions as well. And you kind of walk that path with them. And if someone, like you said, like if someone can't afford a personal organizer, even just having a friend with you when you are ready to kind of go through some things or get rid of some things, I
Yeah.
think can be so helpful. So I'm glad you said that
Mhm.
earlier, just about having somebody with you.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that your services are only in person, right? Like, is there anything virtual you do for people
You
or is it
know,
all
I
in person?
have done a little bit of virtual things, but I really do love working with people in person because then I'm hands in and I'm diving in with them. So I'm in the Nashville
Hmm.
area primarily, but I'm open to traveling.
Yeah, well, that's so fun. Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to ask you about. I've just loved this conversation. I just love the intersection of, something like organizing a space. It sounds, I don't know, like not emotional or whatever. But then when you pair it
Oh,
with
oh,
this
it's
huge life
emotional.
transition, oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm sure it's emotional for lots of people, not just people who are splitting things up or
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah. And that's why people hold on to things, right? We're sentimental. They mean something to us. They remind us of something or someone or an experience. And so, yeah, I think it's
A lot of
very
times
interesting.
that's true. Also, stuff accumulates. Possessions just
Hmm.
accumulate. So I encourage people, don't start with the stuff that's hard. Don't start with that sentimental stuff that like you launched into like, what do I do with, photos and wedding rings? I'm like, well, that's sentimental. That's the hardest category to tackle, honestly.
Ah,
And so I
mm-hmm.
encourage people, like, don't start with that. Start with like, this piled up mail does not need to be here. Like most of this is trash. Get it out. Like trash, trash, trash. Pick up the low hanging fruit first and go like,
Yeah.
what's easy? Let's tackle something that's not emotional first to sort of get accustomed to listening to. I have some friends that we talk about organizing, and we talk about the joy meter, right? Marie Kondo says, does it spark joy? So you're like, how does this feel in my body? How does this make me feel with this thing? Like, and some things are super obvious. You're like, this is just literally trash. It does not need to stay in my space. And so start with the easy things. Start with the easy things, and then move to like, okay, I'm ready to tackle something a little harder, because you start to feel the freshness that comes from releasing junk. And then that can be empowering to go like, okay, I know this is going to be worth it. Hashtag worth it, right? So
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a good point too. I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about starting small or just,
yes,
clear off one flat space or do one
yep,
drawer. And I think that it builds momentum. It's like when you organize one
yes,
little space or clean off
right,
a certain area, it's
yes,
like, oh, it
mm-hmm.
makes you feel better. And so then it makes you
Yeah, it does.
motivated to keep going.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, for
that's
sure.
fun.
And celebrate every step along the
Mm,
way. Like I cleared a countertop, I celebrate, right? Like, and finding ways to do that. Like when I'm working, I actually drink water after every step. I'm like, okay, we finished this shelf, drinking water. We finished this thing, drinking water. And that's sort of become my pause to acknowledge the work that's been done, and to celebrate. It doesn't have to be alcohol to be able to be, bubbly and feel celebratory. I mean, it could be a delicious little happy dance, right? Just like, yeah, I did it. Even just putting, sometimes I'll have people put their hands up in the air like, I did it. Because just having that feeling of celebration is also so empowering to get you to keep going.
I love that idea. That's so fun. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everything you shared. And
Absolutely.
I know this is going to be super helpful for people. And so I can't wait.
I hope so.
If you have any questions or comments out there, please share them. And if anybody's local to Nashville, definitely for sure, then how can they find you?
Yeah. So my website is victoryorganizing.com. And or you can reach out to me via email, which is Lauri. Let's do hello, because that's easier to spell. HELLO, hello at victoryorganizing.com is probably the best way. Or you can text me, 615-592-0956. Oh, and I do
Awesome.
have Facebook and Instagram too. I'm at Victory Organizing on Facebook. I had to get the underscore for Instagram. So at Victory underscore organizing on Instagram, if you want to see some of the work I've done.
Okay, that is awesome. Well, I just love your energy and I'm just so glad you came on the podcast. It's been so fun to have this conversation. And so I just really appreciate you. And now I'm going to go get to work and like start organizing some stuff.
Yes, do it. Go start organizing. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. If you're feeling lost, overwhelmed, or unsure of how to move forward after your divorce, I've created a free guide just for you. It's called the 5 Stages of Divorce Recovery, and it lays out the roadmap to help you heal, rebuild, and love your life after divorce. This guide is packed with insights and actionable steps that will take you from grieving to embracing your future with confidence. Click the link in this podcast description, and the free guide will be delivered straight to your inbox.